Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about resonant sound design. It's a type of sound design that uses certain effects and certain ideas to create the resonances and the tones that you have within the sounds that you're creating. And that's what we're going to be talking about. First, I want to say that I have gotten some questions lately on people who want to support me financially because I make all of these videos for free. There's a few ways to do that. I'm working on a Patreon, so there will be a new opportunity there. That's why I'm also talking about this now. Another way is to buy my products, and the third way is to just donate to me via my website. There's a PayPal donation link there. I will from now on link those in the description, so you can go to my Patreon, which will be linked in the description, as well as my PayPal donation page. I don't know if my Patreon will already be live when this video goes up. I hope it will. In that case, it will be in the description if you're interested. So without further ado, let's get right into this tutorial. So to start off this tutorial, I quickly want to show you a demo of what we're going to be creating. So let's play that first, and then I'll talk a little bit about the resonator, which is a key ingredient for resonant sound design, but there are also some other techniques that I want to talk about. And then I'll just go through the 4 sounds that I've prepared for today. So that was the demo. Hopefully you can see that this technique creates some really cool sounds and some really unique kind of leads and stuff like that. The 4 sounds that we're going to be making are those 4 leads that you can see right here in white. But first I want to talk about the resonator specifically. So here I've set up a quick track. I have an audio track with just a normal drum loop on it. That's here before the resonator is turned on. Now, if we turn on the resonator, what it will do is it will take the input frequencies and it will at certain points create kind of peaks in the spectrum. So with it at 100%, you can see it sounds like this. Now, the key thing to note is what key it is doing that in. So if we go here and we look at the peaks where they land on the spectrum, you can see that they follow the harmonic series of a saw wave set to the key of C2, which is selected right here. C2, C3, and then it just goes up within the same harmonic series. You can see it's a saw wave because the second harmonic is 1 octave above the first harmonic. As I said, C2, and then here we have C3. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do. You can add different voices if you want to have one that's octave above it, if you want one that's 2 octaves below it. You can set different voices here, we can mix them, we can detune them slightly with this knob here. We can set the decay time of these resonances, which makes the tone longer or shorter basically. We have an input filter here, which you can turn off to just get the full frequency range, or you can play with it. Different filter types as well. Then we have a width where you can set just the amount of stereo width, and then finally dry, wet and gain. So those are all of the controls basically. Now the first technique that I want to show you is how you can use it to create some really cool custom wavetables. These wavetables can then be used for synths like Vital, which is really good in importing these kind of waves. I've had less results with Serum or Faceplant. They tend to not import very well on these kind of sounds, but for Vital it's really cool to import it that way. But I just want to show you one way of many that you can use this technique to actually make your own wavetables and then create synths out of them. So here I've done some processing on a vinyl loop to create some really cool tones out of it. This is the first step. It's just an echo, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I want to just now let you listen to the dry sound. So that's not very interesting. So let's now use the echo to create some tones out of this. And what you'll know is if you want the tones to be constantly changing, then you would need to change the delay time of these echoes. And the way that I've done that is I've recorded an automation. As you can see, there's many points in here. But for this, what we get if we enable this delay, you get a lot of clicks kind of playing one after the other. And to note here is that the feedback is at 100% and the filters are all the way open, and also that we stay relatively low with our delay time here. The maximum is like 43 seconds here, or yeah, maybe here it's a little bit more, but usually we stay very low to like the under 15-20 milliseconds. So you get that sound. The final thing to note here just quickly is that this is set to ping pong. This will just give it the stereo effect when it's set to just normal stereo, so both of them will play at the same time. It sounds like this. It just makes sure that the left and the right channel is different from each other, and therefore you get the stereo effect. So once you get that sound, I've recorded it into this track here, and I decided to basically do it again, the same trick with the echo. But this time the delay is actually not being automated, it's set to a specific amount. And the way you calculate that is that you take the frequency of the key that you want to target, the key that you want it to sound like, and then you divide 1000 by that frequency to get the time in milliseconds that you would need to set here. So for the frequency of G sharp, which was the key that I was targeting, I got a frequency of 103.82, I believe, 83 maybe, around that ballpark. And as you can see from the calculation, that's just over 100, because 1000 divided by 100 would be obviously 10. So it's just over 1000 hertz that we're targeting here, and therefore we set it to just below this. A good website that you can use for this is this chart here. I will link this in the description. This is just a chart of all of the different frequencies that you can find here, and you can just take this, divide 1000 by whatever value that you want to target, and then you can set that result as the milliseconds for the delay. So once we had that, I wanted to still improve the tone and the keying of this particular sound, and therefore I decided to also add the resonators to it. So now we get this with the resonators. Without it, it sounds like this. It also resonates, but this just resonates a bit more. So from there, with a little bit of EQ, we recorded it again, and we got this sound. And then to create wavetables from it, what I did is I cut it up. So you can see this is just the same thing, but cut up in little pieces. And I decided to save those as files. I had saved them as files right here. As you can see, these are the different files. And now we can import those files within Vital. So now let's quickly listen to the final sound that we're creating from this effect. And then we'll look at the Vital patch that creates the sound. So this is the patch right here. You can see it's a fairly simple patch. We've just imported 3 of these waves as wavetable. You go in here and you can set it as wavetable. I believe these second ones are either vocode or pitch splice. Different import modes have different ways of converting the data within the file to an actual wavetable, and each deliver different ways. So they give you different tones, and you can experiment there in exactly how you want to import them. Then I took a random modulator at 1/16, set them to the wavetable of all 3 wavetables here, so the wavetable position that is. And then I took 2 of them, the first 2, and put them through this bandpass filter. So that's giving it the sweeping effect that we hear. And then finally for the third one, we're automating the level of that. Looking at the effects, you can see it's a pretty standard lead setup. We have some soft clipping to louden it. We have a compressor to make it even louder, make it just stand out and give it some uniform volume over time. We have a delay, and then finally an EQ to shape the sound a little bit. So all the crazy details and the real tones that you hear aren't from any cool synthesis tricks that we're using. It's just all coming from the wavetable. And that's really powerful, because then you can just drag in the wavetable that you've created. You can even save it once you've dragged it in, so you don't have to get these files again. You can just save them as an actual wavetable and just open them up directly in the synth. And you can immediately start playing with it, and you basically have a viable sound that you can work with. So for the second technique, what we're doing is instead of going to wavetables to get our final sound, we're going directly to audio. So it's a little bit faster in some cases, but you can also use the audio to again do some different synthesis techniques, which I'll both show in this case. So this is what we're starting off with. It's just a kind of ambient effect sound. I'll again turn this off so you can hear the original. So it's just a little bit of a droney sound with once in a while you hear some ambience like birds and stuff like that. And this is just like a Foley recording that I found somewhere in my sample packs. As you can see, it's cinematics, so it's from one of the sample packs that I own. And with it all turned on, with all of the effects turned on, it sounds like this. So you get this bit of a droney, more tonal feel, and you also get some distortion, which is obviously coming from this overdrive. But the resonator really, but what gives it this tonal quality is this resonate, and therefore it's really important in the synth patch. As you can hear, without it, it's just a mess. And this resonator just gives it the tone that you want so that you can actually use it in a tonal sense. It's like a synth sound or a lead sound, or maybe even more of an atmosphere sound if that's what you're going for. So the way I've set this one up, as you can see, I've set the key to G#0. I've set up some settings and I've turned off the filter, so all of the frequencies are coming through. And then I've just set up different pitches here, mostly octaves. But here you can see we also have a +7s, that's a power chord. So you get some extra metallic kind of feel from it. Next we go into a little bit of a chorus, which just gives it a little bit of extra gluing all together. Then we go into the overdrive, which gives it its tonal distortion quality. And then finally into the reverb for some more ambience. So once I had that, I decided to record the output from that, and that's what you can see here. This is the resulting output. And I immediately noticed that we have this nice decaying tone here. And if we listen to that, you can hear it's kind of this plucky kind of sound. And what I like to do is I like to take those sounds and use those as maybe like almost like a grid synth, which is just this repeating synth that plays over and over again, that gives your track some stability. You might have heard it into the demo. But the way that I did that is I took that plug and I had this modified track where I just took a small section of it and then I pitched it up by an octave. And then I could just select the length that I wanted, which in this case was an 8th note. So from there, without any additional processing, what I did is I made it just louder. So I consolidated it like this and set it to 0. You can see this waveform matches exactly. And then here, just to make copying easier, I just consolidated a whole bar so that I could easily copy it over from one to the next. We basically have this, which is like a little bit of a plug that once in a while just plays to give all of the other lead elements some stability. You can see a little bit of the processing that I've done on here. Fairly standard stuff. We have a reverb, then we have a little bit of modulation on the frequency, so it's like opening up the cutoff for this one. Here you can see how in the start it's kind of low passed here, and then it just completely opens up to give it its full power. And then we go into a saturation, which just glues it nice together. The third way that I've used this sound is with some granular synthesis. Now I like to do my granular synthesis in a way that is not really granular synthesis. The reason why it's not really actual granular synthesis, because at any one instance of time there's only really one grain playing, and normally what you would have with granular synthesis is that you would have multiple instances of the sound playing at the same time. In this case, what I've done is I've just dropped it into a sampler, selected a loop point, basically like a start amount and then a length. Then we have this LFO, which is just randomly modulating every 16 notes the position of where the loop starts, therefore giving you some different tones. That then goes through some basic processing, as you can see, a saturator and an echo, and then we end up with this. So the final way that I've used this resonator, and the idea of resonating sound design, is to use it in some kind of rising synth, which sounds like this. To me, that synth almost sounds like a normal squelch, but it has a cool extra tonality to it, which is achieved by the effect rack that I'm using with a whole bunch of different resonance in there. So let's just focus on this first chain for now. And as you can see, what I've done is I've selected G0 here. So let's actually take a look at that. And we're going to look at the first chain here, and we note that it's set to G#0. And then there's a whole bunch of higher harmonics to that, which basically can create a chord. So So you have +3, +5, +7, and +9. And those together all form like a minor chord for this particular key here. And then we have one for G#1, G#2, G#3, and G#4. And all of those I have set the frequency to this first macro here, and then the second macro will be the tri-wet for all of those. So quickly, the kind of squelch without it sounds like this. And again, with it, it sounds like this. So the sound going into that effect track, I quickly want to go over it. It's not really that important. It's just a very basic squelch. You can see no effects, but we have two oscillators, one with one voice and one with three voices going through bandpass synth, which is just being modulated by this macro. This macro is then controlled by this other macro in the instrument effect track, which is also controlling this frequency parameter here. And then the dry wet is controlled on its own. So those are the two modulations that we have. Finally, it's going through some erosion that brings in some more high end towards the end. We have an EQ for it, which has a little bit of a volume boost to it as well, because it's fairly loud at the start. And then we have the same thing here with the saturator, which has a little bit of an output volume as well, changes the output volume over time. And then finally it goes into an echo. So you can see that a good quantity of this tone of this sound is coming from the characteristics that these resonators bring. That's really what it's all about in this video, is talking about resonators so you can see how powerful of a tool it is for actual sound design, especially in Psytrance here with what we're doing. So I hope I could inspire you with this video and I could shed some light on an effect that I think isn't used quite as often as it should be. Researching this video, I've definitely found myself using it more and more also in my actual productions. Say that I have a little bit of a crazy sound and I want to tame it a little bit more, tune it, turn it into a little bit more of a normal tonal sound, then you can use a resonator for that as well. So this is going to be the video. Again, if you want to support me, there's now financial options to do so in the description. If you want another way to support me, you can do so by leaving a like on the video and subscribing. You can turn on notifications if you want to be notified by YouTube. Just hit the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button if you're subscribed. But for now, this is going to be the video for today. I hope you really enjoyed it and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.